Hey everybody, what's up and welcome back to the garden. Today we are going to be taking a closer look at our dahlias and more importantly how to take dahlia cuttings. Now plant propagation and taking dahlia cuttings is just a great way to increase the number of plants that you have in your yard and ultimately increase the number of plants that you can save. And it's just a really cost-effective way to get the most for your money, especially, when some dahlia varieties can be very expensive. If you've been following along on the channel this season, you know that we started a lot of dahlia seedlings. Seedlings? No, we started a lot of dahlia tubers in trays. There is a video for that. I highly recommend that you check that one out. I certainly know the process of learning to get a pre-start on my dahlias was very helpful for me. And it's really helpful, especially if you want to take dahlia cuttings. Now, there are tons of ways to take dahlia cuttings. Just go ahead and say, disclaimer, I am very much a beginner. I am not someone who grows dahlias for exhibition or, in large quantities. I am just a person with a backyard, just like a lot of people who watch these videos. Mainly, I just want to share my experiences, and maybe it'll help somebody, maybe it won't, who knows. But why not put it out there? So I have started my dahlia tubers in these trays. As you can see, they have grown quite a bit. A lot of them have grown quite a bit. Now, a lot of people take dahlia cuttings when this new growth from the tuber just starts and emerges. I personally like to wait till they get a bit bigger. Since I am not very confident in my dahlia cutting abilities, I like to ensure that the dahlia tuber plant is healthy. The plant that is growing out of the tuber, I want to make sure that that is healthy. And I want to make sure that my new cutting is healthy. So I usually take about 1 or 2 cuttings per dahlia tuber, but I have seen that some people take much more. I wouldn't take more than like 5 or something. I've been told at least that can negatively impact the health of the plant from the tuber, because you got to remember the tuber is stored energy for that plant. So we want to make sure that we are not damaging the future plant from the tuber. To begin taking our dahlia cuttings, the first thing I did was fill up a tray full of moist potting mix. This is just a soilless potting mix. I am filling up a tray because this tray is going to be going into my unheated hoop house, my unheated low tunnel. If you do not have a low tunnel or a hoop house, it is important to note that you can also use milk jugs or 2-liter bottles. Much like the winter sowing method, you can use these bottles as humidity domes or greenhouses. It's just a really, really easy and cost-efficient way to take cuttings and to root the cuttings outside. You don't need a grow light. You don't need a setup inside. You can do this outside. The ideal time to begin taking dahlia cuttings here in zone 6B7, I'm in Kentucky, is about the end of March and all through April. That's personally when I do it. I have also taken them a little bit later in May and early June. But if I'm going to do that, I don't need the hoop house. I don't need the greenhouse. Don't need any of that. If I'm going to do that in early summer like that, I have plenty of heat and humidity. Just putting them in the yard in a shady location that's a little bit sheltered, those will root also as well. If you want to start rooting dahlia cuttings early in the season in winter, I would say definitely do that indoors. Unfortunately, I don't have experience doing that indoors, so I can't really offer any advice there in terms of, grow lights and heating pads and things like that. But it is definitely possible. I've seen people do it tons of times. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tray of dahlias and I'm going to begin cutting. Now ideally you would want a sharp knife. I am just using these garden snips. I've also heard that some people just use their fingers. It really just depends on, as the plants are, your own personal preferences, etc. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reach into the plant and I am going to find a leaf node or leaf pair group, and I'm going to make a cut right below that pair of leaves. Ideally, I'd like to take this cut fairly close to the top of the growing tip and leave plant material on the plant, like I said, to ensure that that dahlia is going to keep growing. This is just something I do personally. Taking a cutting, you never ever want to damage the tuber eye, the actual eye where the growth is coming from. You never want to damage that or get any of the tuber, because that is going to damage that eye and you are not going to get any more growth from that tuber. That's another reason that I like to go ahead and take cuttings high, just to make sure I'm doing everything right. Once I have removed that cutting, usually my cuttings are about 2 to 3 inches, sometimes 4, sometimes they get a little tall, but ideally I like them to be about 2 to 3 inches tall. I am going to carefully remove these 2 bottom leaves, bottom pair of leaves. When I do that, you'll see a little kind of growth point on both of those leaves. I like to leave that there. I want to make sure I don't damage that. I'm just going to peel those leaves off. If you look at the bottom of the stem when you take the cutting, it will either be hollow or solid. Ideally, we want that stem cutting to be solid. We want it no hollow stem, nothing. We want that to be solid, ideally. However, sometimes it is hollow just because I wait so late in the growing season. I give them so much time before I take the cutting. Sometimes that stem is hollow. I personally don't worry about that. I go ahead and I put that in my tray, and usually it roots. I'd probably say 8 times out of 10 that hollow cutting will root as well. Before you put this in the moist potting mix, you have an option. You can dip this in rooting hormone of your choice. I personally never use rooting hormone. I usually have about I'd say 85 to 90% success rate with dahlia cuttings with no rooting hormone whatsoever. So it's up to you. I personally don't do it. All I'm going to do is, once I've peeled off those 2 leaves, I'm just going to stick that in my potting soil and repeat the process over and over and over. Occasionally you do get a cutting that has a lot of leafy green top growth on it. You don't really want that if it's kind of excessive. So what I like to do is kind of cut those leaves in half. The main reason I do that is that as these are beginning to root, we want to make sure that they are conserving water and they're not going to wilt and, be stressed essentially. In general, these cuttings usually take root within about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks being the most time that I've ever waited. Anything that hasn't rooted over 4 weeks, I just go ahead and toss it out anyway because that's too long. You can always check on the cuttings, make sure they're rooting, just giving them a gentle tug in the tray to see if there's any resistance. And within hardly any time at all, you'll have new plants to go out into the garden to grow this year and hopefully produce new tubers so that you can save and enjoy and continue just to multiply the number of plants that you have available in your garden. I think it's really awesome. It's such a great process and it's so simple. If you've never tried it before, it might be something that you're really interested in. That's really about it for this one. Hopefully it was helpful. I'm not quite sure if it was. If it was and you're new to the channel, be sure to hit subscribe. Absolutely love to have you making all kinds of new videos about, gardening, growing your own cut flowers, growing vegetables, some DIY projects. Really is a surprise, so if you like a little bit of a surprise, you never know what I'm going to upload. Be sure to hit the bell icon to get notifications so you'll know whenever we post something new. Share with your friends, all that good stuff. We're really just trying to grow the channel and welcome more people into our little gardening community here. And don't forget to check out our blog. The link to that is in the description. The blog offers a lot more details about the posts that you see here on YouTube, so be sure to visit the blog. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, we are on Patreon. I always appreciate that so much. Helps me kind of keep things going around here, as well as our subscription soapboxes and individual soapboxes you can check out on my website as well. All the links are down in the description below. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye, guys.